Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. I wonder why you're here, but thanks for being here anyway. A little PSA before we begin. If you've seen my previous videos, you might see that this one is, again, a little different than the ones before. And that's just how things are going to go. This channel is my chaos child. I will do kind of whatever I want here. It's just my current creative outlet, and I tend to switch around things that I want to currently talk about. So yeah, that's what's going to happen. I know my first video was about LGBT issues. I might come back to that at some point again, but that's not going to be the main theme of the channel. So if you came for the LGBTQ stuff and you don't really enjoy what I'm doing right now, that's fine. Feel free to unfollow. I won't be mad at you. But if you want to see where this all will take me, then subscribe and stay subscribed. And yeah, enjoy the ride. So in this video, I want to talk about Ragnarok. Not Thor Ragnarok, but Ragnarok, the Norwegian Netflix series. It came out last year in January, I think, at the end of January. And so I know I'm a little bit late, but the second season is still in works, and while it's not out yet, I want to kind of talk about the first season. This video is not a review. I'm not going to be reviewing it because I really liked it, and when I really like something, I usually tend to not be able to be critical about it. So I want to talk about theories, about interpretations that I have about this series in relation to Norse mythology. So there is a lot of Norse mythology stuff in this. That's what the series is about, right? So I'll just be talking about what I kind of feel is what is connected to the stories in Norse mythology, how the characters are possibly linked to some characters in Norse mythology, how the stories are mirrored, or what they might do in the future with the series. This show is kind of based around having those kinds of mysteries and hidden or not so hidden references to Norse mythology, and I will be talking about the plot, so there will be spoilers, but I won't be discussing the plot itself, really just what it is connected within Norse mythology. So first, let's get this off the table. The setting. The name of the show is Ragnarok, which in Norse mythology is this idea of the end of the world. It's not the end of the world as in once the world ends, nothing will happen anymore. It's kind of like a reset point. The idea is that this show is set after Ragnarok. This is obvious from multiple references in the show itself. Multiple supernatural beings in it kind of say that, oh yeah, this big fight happened, all of these people are dead, which is what Ragnarok kind of predicts. And so we can safely say that this is set after Ragnarok. And, which I thought was a really cool addition, the town where this takes place is called Edda, which is, you know, the Eddas, the poetic and the prose Edda. And I think that's a really cool idea because the actual town where they filmed this in is not called Edda. And I thought that was a really nice like callback, like, ha, if you know the Eddas, you know what this is a reference to. Now I'm gonna mostly get into the characters, because the characters I feel like are the most interesting part of the story. So we have the main character, which is called Magne. He is clearly somehow connected to Thor. When the story starts and he and his family arrive in Edda, we see him meet this weird duo that I will talk about later, and there is some sort of scene where some powers are awakened in him. As the show continues, we can see that these powers are connected to Thor, the Norse god of thunder and multiple other things. So we can see Magne predict the weather multiple times and suddenly develop these powers. He can run really fast and he can throw stuff really far, and his senses are stronger, augmented. And at one point, at multiple points actually, we see him kind of conjure lightning and hammers. Thor is very much linked to a hammer, to having a hammer. His hammer in the myths, Mjolnir, is an important kind of symbol in Norse mythology. And we can see Magne, he has this hammer, and I will talk about the hammer a little bit later. So not only he develops these kinds of powers, but he also has this one experience when he's in the house of the main baddies, and he looks in the mirror and he sees himself, or like, it's his face, but his hair is different, he has a beard and all that stuff, and it kind of reminds you of Thor. So he looks in the mirror and he doesn't see himself, but he sees himself as Thor. And to drive this point home, in the last episode, the main big guy dude, Vidar, he even like calls Magne Thor to get his attention. There's this big fight at the end, and Vidar comes in and he announces his entrance kind of by shouting Thor at Magne. So this is kind of very clear. I feel this is not a hidden reference. They made this very clear, very obvious. But the question is, who exactly is he? What exactly is he? Is he actually Thor? Thor that was reborn after Ragnarok? Or is he a manifestation of Thor? Like, not really Thor, but kind of Thor? Or is he like the child of Thor, his son or something that has his powers and whatever? Well, actually, in Norse mythology, there is a character that is the son of Thor and has a similar name to Magne, which is Magne. He is the son of Thor, but we can see in the show that Magne is like really supposed to be Thor. As I said, Vidar called him Thor, literally. So I think it's more probable that he's Thor reborn or some sort of manifestation of Thor. However, there is some kind of foreshadowing that Magne's father might be involved in all of this Norse mythology, supernatural stuff. Because, well, first of all, Vidar kind of seems to know something about Magne's father, right? Like, we don't really know, but there's some, like, scenes where he kind of, like, looks and he looks up Magne and he checks that he is the son of his father and whatever. So there's that, and then there are two things that seem important that Magne's father left behind, which is a hammer and a knife. And the hammer is the one that Magne throws a bunch of times, you know, that's like the actual symbol for Thor. And then the knife, the dagger, he just kind of carries it around, and we don't see them having any special powers right now, but that might change. The knife and the hammer both have this symbol on it. If any of you know about runes, this is the S rune in Elder Futhark. This shape is actually not the most popular. The shape which only has 3 strokes is more popular, but this one with the 4 strokes is still the same rune. It's just like an older form. And so it is the S rune, like it symbolizes the letter S, and I don't know what it's connected to right now. It might be, I don't remember the name of Magne's father right now. It might be his name, or it might be connected to something else, and I don't really know at this point. I just don't think it's a thing that we can know. But in the future, it might be important. It might link Magne's father to something. It might have some sort of meaning, and I feel that would be cool, because it's like put in here right now and it's just like, oh yeah, it's the letter S, but maybe later it'll be like, whoa, oh, it makes sense now. Moving on to the main baddies, I really like them because it took me a while to kind of get to what they possibly are representations of. I did like a bunch of research for this, and it's funny. First of all, what is kind of really obvious is their name. Their family name is Jutul. And in Norse mythology, there is this kind of giant Jotun. It seems like this is a very clear callback to that, right? The Jutuls are supposed to be Jotnar, which is the plural of Jotun. They call their house Jutulheim, which is a callback to Jotunheim, which is the realm where these giants, Jotuns, live. But when I say giants, I don't mean actually giants. I don't mean like big people. In Norse mythology, it's a little more complicated. If you want to look into that, go ahead, but it's a bunch of stuff. They're not exactly giants. We can see that they kind of hide their form, and they have like orange eyes, but they're not supposed to be like just really tall people or really big people. They're supernatural creatures. I also found this little thing on Wikipedia, so I'm pretty sure that this interpretation is correct. Now that we've established that the Jutuls are Jotnar or giants, the question is, who exactly are they? Are they just random Jotnar, or are they, like Magne is kind of whatever supposed to be Thor? Are they also some kind of character that we know from the myths? Here I would like to credit a Tumblr post that I found. I had some of these ideas from this Tumblr post already, but this kind of gave me an idea that I would like to explore here. What this post suggests is that the episode 3, this whole scene where Magne and Lauritz go to the Jutuls' home, it is possibly supposed to mirror this one story, which is that of the Utgarda Loki. It's a myth. It's a story. I'm not going to say everything. If you want to know the whole thing, you can go ahead and look it up, but I'm gonna explain it really quickly. So it's Thor, Loki, and this other human boy who is not really important right now. But they arrive to the place of Utgarda Loki, who is Jotun, who is a giant. And what happens there is Utgarda Loki challenges them to a bunch of contests, just for the funsies. And in the story, they lose all of those contests, even though it's contests based on things that they're really good at, because who they're actually standing against is not people, not even gods or giants. It's abstract concepts, well, except for fire, but it's like fire and old age and thought and stuff like that. So it's, and the sea, I think? Right, yeah. And so it's not something that they can, as gods, be better than. For example, Loki is challenged for an eating contest where he's supposed to eat, and he eats quickly and he eats a lot, and so he's confident that he's gonna win it. But he's standing against a person who is actually fire. So Loki eats everything really quickly, but fire is as quick as he is, but eats also the bones and parts of the thing that they're eating from. I don't remember exactly what it's called in English. So he loses, but that's because it's not like a fair fight. And that's the whole story. You know, all the contests that they do is this kind of thing. And I feel like this is kind of mirrored in the episode, or in that part of the episode. So starting off, Magne is told to eat more. It's not exactly a contest, but you know, Ran kind of tells Magne to take more of the food, which is not exactly mirroring of that from the myth, but it's kind of like a callback, I think. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. I just thought that it was a callback. Then, of course, it's that whole thing with the mead, which directly mirrors what happens in the story. So Thor is good at drinking, and he is challenged by Utgarda Loki to drink from this like horn thing, right? But he drinks a lot. He's supposed to down it in like one thing, right? I don't know English, sorry. But he doesn't, because what he's actually drinking is the sea or the ocean. So he can't drink it all. And I feel like this is mirrored in the episode, because Magne, he also gets mead into this kind of horn thing, and he drinks it, and he takes a while to drink it. You know, I remember watching the episode, I was like, whoa, you're taking a while there, boy. This is the first kind of contest, and unlike in the story, he actually passes this contest. And then the last one is where he has this strength contest with Ran. They do this like hand thing. And what happens there is that she beats him. This is actually similar to what happened in the story, where Thor was supposed to fight this like old lady, I think. Okay, I don't remember exactly, and I don't want to go back to look it up. So either he has to fight her or he has to lift her up, but I think he has to fight her. Whatever, he loses. And in the episode, we can see that he also loses. And, well, Thor loses because this old lady is actually the personification of old age, of age. So he can't beat old age. Everyone ages and dies. And okay, children. There doesn't seem to be like a lesson to be taken from it. It just seems like a fun story that someone wrote. But in the episode, it is implied that they're kind of testing Magne. They're seeing if he is a normal human being or if he's actually a supernatural being or, whatever like them. To get back to the characters, during the fight or the strength contest or whatever thingy, Ran's true form probably is revealed and she looks kind of like an old woman. And if we connect that to the story, the original myth, we could say, hey, maybe she is supposed to be Ellie, this personification of age, of old age. But that might not be what this is. I feel like in the story of Utgard Loki, there is a clear distinction between who is a giant, a Jotun, and who is an abstract concept, a personification of something. It is then clearly said at the end, like, oh yeah, the old lady that you were fighting, she was not actually a giant, she was not actually a person, she was a personification of something. And I think it is shown that all of the Jutuls are Jotnar, so I don't think that Ran is actually Ellie. Then if we get into the names, Ran, which, has this long A, which is not the same as the name of the character in the show, but it's similar. Ran is a Jotun goddess of the sea and like a personification of the sea. So it's possible that Ran is this goddess, this Jotun lady, but I don't think we can tell at this point. I also there was a strange scene that I noticed and it kind of stuck in my mind, and I went through a bunch of analyses of other people, okay, mostly on Tumblr, but people were talking about it, like this post that I talked about before. A lot of people were trying to see who exactly the characters are, and what I feel like, I didn't see anyone talk about this, I feel like all of them missed this, there was this one scene in episode 3 where it is implied that Fjord and Saxa are older than Ran and possibly also Vidar. So what happens basically is they are discussing what they hid in the ice. Vidar and Ran are kind of criticizing that it was hidden in the ice, saying that, oh, it was a dumb idea to put it in the ice. Why did you put it in the ice? And this is defended by Fjord, who says, oh, back in the day, everyone did it like that. Everyone hid it in the ice because the glaciers were huge. And then Ron says, oh, but you could have at least included us in that decision or in the council or whatever. And Fjord says, you were still children at the time. And Saxa supports this by saying children weren't included back then. Which to me seems like they're saying, Fjord and Saxa, and saying, you were children at the time when we made these decisions, and they were not. So Fjord and Saxa are older than Ran and Vidar. I was really confused when I found this. I even went through multiple languages of translation, like of the subtitles, just to make sure that I wasn't just misinterpreting it. But no, it's in all of them. Okay, not in all of them. I went through like 3, but that's insane. I feel like we're not talking about this enough. It's not a really crucial information in figuring out who exactly they are, but it kind of adds into the mystery of their family dynamics, because Vidar, he's like supposed to be the dad of the family. And if he is actually younger, then I have even more questions than answers, honestly, but whatever. One thing also that I want to point out before we move on is that Saxa, her name could come from the name Jaren Saxa, who was a Jotun lady who was actually a lover to Thor, and she was the mother of Magne. It adds onto my kind of suspicion that they, even though their names are related to existing Norse mythology characters, they are not exactly, because if Saxa is actually the mother of Magne, what? No. Let's just leave that there. It's cool, I think it's interesting, and it kind of connects, but I don't think that's what is actually going on here. I also want to make a little part about Lauritz because I love his character. So, like many people, I have seen the image of reborn Loki in Lauritz. Lauritz? Lauritz. Whatever Magne is to Thor, Lauritz could be that to Loki. There is a bunch of evidence, right? First of all, if you look at them visually, the two brothers kind of seem to mirror the image that you could know if you watch Marvel movies, you know? So Thor and Loki from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they have this kind of visual coding that is similar to Lauritz and Magne in Ragnarok. We have the older brother who is kind of taller and bigger, blonde and blue-eyed. And then you have the younger brother who is a little shorter. Well, you know, in Marvel he's not that much shorter, but in Ragnarok he is, with longer hair, dark hair, and blue eyes. So, you know, you have this first parallel. When I saw them, I was like, oh, this is Thor and Loki. Moving on. Even though it's not said anywhere, the way it is said about Magne being Thor, it's not said that Lauritz is Loki. But then also Lauritz has this kind of personality where he plays tricks and is sarcastic all the time and shows how he's smarter all the time, which not only is like a Marvel Loki thing, but also an actual myth Loki thing. He does these things that we tend to associate with Loki, which is, you know, playing tricks, but then also breaking gender stereotypes and being a queer icon. He dresses up as Ran in the last episode and gives the speech in her place, kind of. And it is implied that he has a crush on Fjord. So, you know, we stan. And he also hangs out with the Jutuls a bunch. He seems to want to spend time with them, even though they're kind of using him to get to Magne. And especially in the second episode, there is this scene at the school dance where Fjord and Saxa start doing this weird dance, and Lauritz actually joins them in that. And to me, that seems to say that he is connected to them somehow. If you're familiar with Norse mythology, you know that Loki is actually a Jotun, a giant in the Norse mythology sense. So if in this show he is a Loki reborn or a manifestation of Loki or whatever, it would make sense that he joins the Jutuls in this kind of weird dance and that he likes this music in Icelandic / Old Norse. You know, it makes sense because they are the same kind of supernatural species. And here I'm kind of grasping at straws, but in the story of the of Utgarda Loki, Thor actually goes to and has to do all these contests. He's there with Loki and with someone else, but whatever. It's the two of them, and it's also Lauritz and Magne who are at the Jutul's home in episode 3 together. So, all in all, I think he is Loki. I think it was not very much discussed in this series, but I think it might come up. I really hope it will come up because that's something I would really like to see. There was also, like, in the initial episodes, like in the first few episodes, there seemed to be this kind of foreshadowing that Vidar and Turid, Magne and Lauritz's mom, have some sort of history together. So what seemed kind of foreshadowed in those few episodes was that Vidar might be Loki's actual father, because they might have had an affair or something, and it seemed to be like a thing that was foreshadowed in the first few episodes, but then it was kind of dropped and not really spoken about. So I'm not sure. It's possible, but I don't think I believe it anymore. We'll see though. There's so many mysteries that we can just kind of talk about, and there isn't any proof that we can base these theories on. I also believe that not every character has a Norse mythology counterpart. I've seen people try to, like, take every major character and find their counterpart in Norse mythology, but I don't believe that's actually the case. For example, Isolde. I love her. She was an amazing character, but I don't think she was some sort of Norse mythology character too. You know, maybe Gry and Iman. Grey was a little more explored, but Iman, she just kind of appeared. She appears in the promotional stuff, so she might be prominent later, but right now we don't know much about her, and Grey is just there as the main love interest. So maybe they are also Norse mythology characters, but we don't know that yet. It's too soon to tell. But two characters that I want to mention is this old man on the moped and this old lady from the shop. I think it was kind of clear that they're important, right? So the old man is very clearly Odin, right? He has an eye patch and he's just kind of hanging around, but I think that he is Odin. Then I actually looked it up and the character's name is Wotan, which is, well, not really Odin, but also kind of Odin. It's hard to explain, like they're not exactly the same. Wotan and Odin are not exactly the same, but it's like Wotan is the Germanic counterpart of the Norse Odin, and they also probably come off from the same Proto-Germanic deity. So they're kind of connected. They're not exactly the same, but they tend to be considered the same. So if this character's name is Wotan, we can assume that this character is also supposed to represent Odin. With the lady, it's a little more complicated. I didn't find any clues in her name. I already forgot her name again. She was the one who kind of awoke Magne's powers, and she's hanging out there at the store, working as a cashier, and she says these, ominous slash prophesizing sentences. And so I think she also has some kind of role. Originally, I thought that she might be Frigg, because she was with Odin or Wotan, this old man, and she awoke those powers and she prophesizes and stuff. It would make sense if she was Frigg, but then in the last episode, we can see her right at the end of the last episode. She kind of peeks out, and it seems that she was watching the fight between Magne and Vidar, and then there is a flash of light, and we can see a bird flying out of there. So we can assume that she was transferred into the bird. And Freya actually has a power that she can turn into a falcon. I don't know what the actual thing is. I've seen people say that she has a cloak of feathers, or that she has a bunch of feathers, or that it's just her power. But she has some sort of way to turn herself into a falcon. And so I was thinking, maybe she could be Freya, because Freya is also an important goddess of the Norse pantheon. So, it could be Freya. Or she could be just a Norn, one of those prophesizing ladies who control the future. But right now, I guess we don't know. But that's the fun thing, you have the kind of missing information, like you don't know. It's cool, and I had a lot of fun just trying to figure all of this out, and sometimes you get stuck and you're like, but it was fun. So I believe that this show is not / will not be strictly following the Norse myths and mythology. Well, first of all, because this is set after Ragnarok, they don't have anything to go on. They don't have any material to bounce off anymore. They have to create everything anew, because as far as I know, there are no stories and myths written about the period after Ragnarok. In the myths about the Ragnarok, some things are said that this series seems to violate. For example, if my theory about Lauritz being Loki is correct, that would mean that this show violates the fact that Ragnarok establishes that Loki will not be reborn after Ragnarok. That would mean that they've decided to not strictly follow the myths to write this show, and personally, I kind of like that. The myths themselves were written, at least as far as I know, the Eddas were written after Christianization, so we don't know how much these myths were changed because of the influence of Christianization. And so to kind of say whatever and interpret the myths as they want and make the series a little more free and not too changed to the actual myths is, I think, a good idea, and I'm personally really looking forward to what they're going to do with the next season. Maybe we'll get more than just one season. I really like it. I really liked it. I hope it's going to go on for a while. I hope the second season will come out soon. But until then, I'll just be going over these theories over and over and again until I go insane, probably.